Hi everyone, I hope you are all well. It's another quite cloudy yet nice day here in the south of England, and for some reason the lighting today is making my hair look really red. Or is it just me? I don't know. I can see lots of red in my hair in the camera view on my laptop right now. So yeah, just funny thing with the light and everything. What have I been up to? Obviously work craziness, sport craziness, because obviously we've had Wimbledon, we've got Euros, we've got the final tonight, and quite honest, the sooner it's over the better. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm really happy for England football team and everything, but I'm not a fan of football whatsoever. So yeah, I've not watched any of the matches. I'm not interested at all. But you know, good luck tonight, guys. Way. And yeah, work, life in general. Virgin River Series 3 dropped on Friday. I watched it. I really liked it. I had some issues, but it was really good. If you haven't watched Virgin River, check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it. I think it's just great. So yeah, not much to report really, just bumbling along as always, listening to lots of podcasts and just getting through each day. But anyway, enough about that. I need to talk about the book I've been reading this week, which is In Search of Rainbow's End by Colin Caffell. Now, last week I talked about the book I had been reading, which was The Murders of White House Farm by Carol Ann Lee. I nearly said Anne Carol Lee then, I don't know why. By Carol Ann Lee, and I found that very, very interesting. It was so detailed, and you know, it was the third person that was completely away from it in 2013, writing about the 1985 case, whereas Colin Caffell was at the epicenter of that case. In case you aren't aware, you didn't see my review last week, The Murders of White House Farm was what I can only describe as, because it was a massacre that happened in 1985 at a farm in England, where basically a guy called Jeremy Bamber rang up the police and said, look, my dad has just called, it was early in the morning, my dad has just called saying my sister's gone crazy with a shotgun, get help. And the police found Jeremy's parents, June and Neville, his sister Sheila, and Sheila's twin boys, Daniel and Nicholas, all dead. And Sheila was holding a shotgun, or it was laid on her with a hand sort of resting on it. And so they went, right, Sheila did it. But Sheila and Jeremy's cousin, Anne, and a guy called Stan Jones, who was one of the police, and he was involved in the investigation, went, there's something not right here. And thanks to them, they basically figured out that Jeremy was the one who actually killed all the family. And so Jeremy was convicted. He's serving a life term in prison, and to this day he claims that he is innocent, when to me that is just absolute rubbish. And there are people who to this day still believe he's innocent as well, and I can't understand, given the evidence, given everything that was there. I'm like, he did it. It's so obvious that he did it. But yeah, there's still people who believe that he is innocent. But each to their own, you know, people believe what they want to believe. It's but yeah, so where's Colin in this equation? So Colin was the ex-husband of Sheila, who's right there, and he's the father of the twins, Daniel and Nicholas. And so this book is from his perspective of everything that happened. Now, just to clarify something, this book was originally published in 1994. He then, because of a drama that took place in 2020 made by ITV, he went back to this book and added a couple of extra chapters onto the end. And so this is the 2020 edition. And the way in which they make that clear is that you've got the introduction, which is from 1994. You then have a second introduction from 2020. You then have obviously the collection of chapters, and then there is a final section which states it was written in 2018, the last two chapters, and 2020. You know, kind of because that was when the development of the series was happening, and then it was released in 2020. So yeah, so it makes it very, very clear the dates and everything of which sections are 94 and which ones are more recent. So this is the 2020 edition that I've got, and I have to say, right, first off, these kind of books are ones that I don't generally go to. And what I mean by that are books where people are talking about horrific things that have happened to them. Now, W.H. Smith, a company here in the UK who sells like stationery, magazine, everything you can think of really under the sun, that's to do with stationery, magazines, jigsaw puzzles, CDs, DVDs, books, all that jazz. They have a section which I've always found very weird, but it's there. And it's a section that is, it's called, I think it's called, because it obviously it's been like 2 years since I stepped into a W.H. Smith because of COVID. I think it's called something like the childhood trauma section, literally. And there's a whole, in Cheltenham, the one which I mainly go to when I go into W.H. Smith to look at books because their store is really quite big. There is a whole section dedicated to this. And it's all of them have the same kind of cover, and they're all about childhood abuse and children crying and black and white and, you know, horrific stuff. And those kind of memoirs and such, I just go, no, thank you, and I walk away. It's not that I have issue with, you know, reading things like that. I just don't feel comfortable reading things like that. So when I picked up this book, I knew straight off that it was kind of going to cover those kind of things because of what Colin Caffell went through. There's no denying that, but I really, really, really wanted to read a book about White House Farm that was from a different perspective than the, I don't want to say cold, but, you know, that disconnected thing of the research that Carol Ann Lee brilliantly did. But I wanted to have a closer kind of emotive perspective, if that makes sense. So I kind of knew what I was going into. Then this book really took me aback, because what it does is that the first 100 to 120 pages covered what I expected, covered, you know, this dark area. And it begins, the first chapter after the introductions, the 1994 version and 2020 version, there it begins the moment that Colin is told about the shooting and that Sheila and both of his children are dead. It just like that. And there's obviously a lot of bleakness and trying to get his head around what happened, and you're following him through. And then about, yeah, as I said, about 100 to 120 pages is when the boy's funeral happened. And it was hard to read. I'm not going to deny it, especially as somebody who doesn't usually read those kind of books. As I just mentioned before, I found it hard. Then suddenly after that point, something shifted and it became something that I didn't expect. And I felt so comfortable after that point. And what it becomes is a book about how Colin dealt with things. Because he doesn't, because of the way that he begins with him being told, He's then going backwards in time to certain events and remembering things, and then he's back to present, and he's back to the past, and back throughout the book, which is what I thought Carol Ann Lee's book would do, as I mentioned in my review last week. But she doesn't. She goes from like the 1800s all the way through to the day that the shooting happened, and that covers about, I think maybe about a third of the book. Then the shooting happens, and then it's investigated from that point. So you understand everything about this family before the shooting happens, whereas Colin goes, here's the shooting, now I'm going to make you understand, and I'm going to keep flipping back and forth. So yeah, so Colin's is structured very differently. But what Colin did was that he wrote this book exactly like the person that he is. And by that, I mean somebody who uses creativity and understand philosophy and understanding the world, and he likes to ask questions. He's a very quiet individual who has dealt with a lot of blows, but he's not allowed it to defeat him. He's never gone to dark sides. He's never gone to dark thoughts, or at least not that he's talked about. I just want to clarify that, because obviously it's totally up to him what he writes, what he wants to share. Totally respect that. He hasn't like gone to drugs or drink and stuff like that. He turned to art. He turned to writing. He turned to music, reading, philosophy. He wanted to understand human nature and how creativity can help to soothe the soul. And that's what the rest of this book is about. It's his journey to fix himself, or at least help soothe the wounds as much as he possibly can. I'm trying to describe it without giving stuff away, because I think it's really important to understand Colin as a person to read this book. And my God, what a wonderful person he is. And he talks about how people have told him how brave he is and everything that he has done and everything that he has survived. And yes, I can agree with that. But if I ever met him, I don't think I would say that to him. I think I'd talk about his art and what he does with it. If you search his name, Colin Caffell, and sculptures, you see this collection of sculptures that he has produced, which are beautiful, absolutely beautiful. All of them have this boldness to them, in that you can feel in the core of the individuals that he's depicting, their heart, their soul, their nature. And yet there's a tinge of sadness, a tinge of darkness, but there's light and beauty and purity to his sculptures that are just stunning. I find them so fascinating. To read the stories of how he developed those sculptures and what they mean to him is wonderful. So it goes from being this bleak place, which you have to read to understand how he felt, to then this journey of a quiet dignity, which he truly has. If you watch any of his interviews, he has this wonderful quiet dignity to him, which is wonderful. And learn how he learns to express himself and to understand what happened to him, what he suffered. It's an absolutely wonderful journey. As somebody who reads books, who loves books, who finds books such an amazing support. There was a bit of this that I have to read because it's absolutely incredible. If I can find it, where is it? Where he talks about the books that have helped him. Oh no, please don't tell me I didn't bookmark it. But he talks about finding connections in books that he never would have thought of otherwise. And the particular book was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it sounded so bizarre that he would find peace in this book, but it wouldn't fit him usually. Here it is. Found it. Forgot to bookmark it, but I found it. But yeah, so this, as somebody who reads books, who finds support from books when I really need it, I totally understood what he meant. So here we go. One of the first significant books presented in this way, although much earlier, was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Now, this may seem extremely incongruous in relation to what had happened, but it turned out to be the perfect thing for me to read, especially after the funerals during our trip to Norway, to get away from it all. That was exactly what the story did. It took me away from it all, but at the same time prepared my mind for what was yet to come. I also found it in some way silly but valuable common ground to stand on. Like the main character, Arthur Dent, my world had been completely destroyed, in his case the Earth itself, and nothing could have prepared either of us for the mind-boggling experiences we were each to encounter in our journeys. It felt half the time that I was living in an alien universe where nobody understood my needs. In a way, the story both parodied and questioned every aspect of not only reality, but all the experiences I have had, keeping me in touch. Keeping me in touch most of all with my sense of humour. It was, however, only possible to see the importance of it in my healing once I'd reached, as one point put it, the laugh out on the other side of the experience. There was also one very important piece of advice printed on the guide's cover. It said, "Don't panic." So the fact that Colin, who had lost his ex-wife, who had lost his children, who had been taken in by the guy who killed them, believing that this story was true, that Jeremy had made up, finding out the truth, watching all of this happen, processing everything, being hounded by the press, picked up The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and found that that helped him cope, is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And as I said, as a book, like, I get it. I totally get what he's talking about. And he talks about the things in like music and opera and art and sculptures and all of these things, and how it connects with spirituality, and that, you know, you may not believe in a god, you may believe in a god, you may believe in multiple gods. The thing is that spirituality can be to nature, it can be to the earth, it can be to anything. And finding connections to spirituality through books and music and art is what has kept him grounded. And I find that so wonderful a message, how it helped him find peace. And you know, it sounds very strange, but it's like, thank God that his sister lived in Norway, because that's why he refers to going to Norway. It allowed him to get away from the press. Nobody could find him. He was completely able to just breathe, to listen to the sounds of nature, to connect again and find this path that he didn't even know he was going down, that would be the wonderful thing that it has been for him. I totally and utterly respect him. I think he's an amazing man, and not just because of the struggles that he went through, what he endured to come out the other side, for understanding how art can be therapy, and the fact that he's gone on to do that, teach workshops in like prisons and hospitals and psychiatric wards and stuff like this to help others, and understanding the world in a completely different perspective and how beautiful it can be despite the horrors is wonderful. I think he's a really underrated person for everything. But also, just to add to that, the underrated thing could also because he disconnected himself. He doesn't want to be noticed. He hasn't taken part in various documentaries and other stuff over the years to do with the White House farm murders. It's something that he just hasn't been able to do or hasn't wanted to do whatsoever until now, where he met with the people who were wanting to make this drama, and he realized that first and foremost was that they wanted to respect absolutely everything, especially Sheila and the boys, because the press were just disgusting about Sheila. The stuff that they published was just absurd, and Colin really wrote this book in order to clear Sheila's name, or Bamps as she was known. Her nickname was Bambi, so he refers to her as Bamps throughout the book. He wanted to clear her name. He wanted it to be known who she truly was. And there is this beautiful thing at the end where he shares the last letter that he got from Sheila, which was a piece of evidence to prove that she wouldn't harm her children. And you read it and you can feel her pain, and you can feel her want for her children to be safe, that she wants to be better. And in order to do that, she had to go away into hospital for a while. She wanted to know the boys were safe, and she knew that they'd be safe with Colin while she was ill. And it's so heartbreaking and beautiful what she writes. It's just, overall, I just feel this warmth when I think of this book, because it's full of love, it's full of respect, it's full of, as I said, spirituality and seeing the beauty of our world. And Colin just writes so elegantly. He just astounds me. I think he's just wonderful, and the fact that he's able to carve out a new life for himself through his art and has had a wonderful career because of it. He's remarried. He has another child. He's moved on, and I'm really happy for him. I'm so happy for him. But yeah, this is one of these books, as I said, that section of like W.H. Smith and such, which I don't usually go near. It's this kind of feel of book I wish, or I hope, should I say, because I haven't picked up those books would convey. But the covers are so dark and sinister and full of young children crying, and I'm like, I can't go near it. Something like this, where it's simple, it's elegant, and it's smiles. This is the kind of, if I were to pick up one of those books that I'm reluctant to, this is kind of the ones that I would pick up. And Colin, I think, deserves so much respect for what he's been through, what he's suffered, and the journey that he has taken was wonderful to read. And I finished this book and I had to just sit in silence for a bit and just think about it. And it made me just listen to like birds. and think about the world and stuff and loved ones, and I think it's really gotten into my gut, my soul a bit, the way that he talks about losing people and what that actually means, and finding beauty at the end of the rainbow. And he's found it, and I'm so happy for him, so happy. So yeah, that was a bit deep, I know, but it's one of these books that it's really hard to describe how extraordinary it is until you read it. So I've done the best I can without giving away any spoilers. But yeah, my heart goes out to Colin, and I think he's an extraordinary man. One of the most extraordinary, genuinely wonderful individuals there are in the world. He's a good man. So those are my thoughts on In Search of Rainbow's End by Colin Caffell. So my usual questions. Would I read this again? Yes, definitely. As I said, the first 120 pages are pretty tough going, but once you get past that point, it's an extraordinary journey. And yeah, I would definitely read this again. Would I read any more of Colin's books? Well, as far as I know, this is the only book Colin's ever written. I don't believe he intends to write any more books, and that's fine by me. If this is the only book he writes, that's good for me. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, I certainly would, but would give the disclaimer that obviously the first 120 pages are pretty hard going, but it is an absolutely beautiful book otherwise. Okay guys, so those are my thoughts on In Search of Rainbow's End by Colin Caffell. If you've read this book, I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. I'll give a thumbs up, thumbs down, type to you, I'll let you decide. And that is the last 5 of the ones I've recently announced. So I will do a separate video announcing my next reads with the new theme. And all 5 of these books, just so you know, are ones that you haven't seen yet in the list of books that I had announced I was going to be reading this year. So I hope you like them. All right, guys. Bye.